So as you've heard me talk about on the show before, I was in a mastermind for several years for really good high-level coaches. And several years ago, I met a lovely woman named Allison Garner, and she had one of those wonderful down-home accents. She was actually from Oshkosh, Lake Winnebago, I think it is.
Yep.
Just, stepping right out of a movie, just a lovely person. Uh, but boy, I wasn't wrong about the lovely part, but the accent and the location kind of belied who I was meeting. Allison is such a badass and so brilliant that I had no idea that she had spent 20 years as a chemical engineer. She's probably one of the world's foremost experts in oil refining technology, which is ridiculous when you start to meet and find out, just what a lovely woman she is. She wrote a book called Think Possible: The Light and Dark Side of Never Running Out of Ideas, which we've talked about here. When you're just such a creative, all this stuff comes. What do you do with all that? But she also wrote a book with her daughter. It's called Unconditional: Learning to Navigate and Reframe Mental Illness Together. So she wrote this book with her daughter, and I remember Allison talking about this in very, very raw and real ways while she was going through it. The mental illness and the challenges of parenting when your kids are going through something. So I asked Allison to be on the show because I know many of you deal, almost all of my clients deal, and it's a conversation that we need to have. So Allison, thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking me. It's an honor.
One of the things that I say about the show is, and why I do what I do, is because I believe that there's an unspoken rule that we all live by, that we don't talk about the cost of the hustle and grind, that we don't talk about the cost of striving to be in the 1%. We're okay with mental illness, with addiction, with broken marriages, and the stress of the hustle and grind, because we all want to be Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk. The other thing that we don't talk about is how prevalent and how not unique you and your daughter's story is. So if you could just tell me, give me the origin story of how you came to be a champion and a voice for this topic.
Well, our daughter, middle school, we kind of had heard going into middle school that girls have it really hard, and that it's probably 7th grade. There's like this myth. I don't know if it's a myth, but people said, just be aware that 7th grade is probably going to be your daughter's worst year ever. And so we were heading into middle school. She had done well up until then, academically, socially, emotionally. She just, she was just tracking right along. And then 6th, 7th grade, we started to notice her, getting more quiet, getting more reserved. And then I don't even remember the first time, but she came into my room and was crying, and she had sliced her arms up with a razor blade. It wasn't a suicide attempt, but it was mutilation of her arm. And she was just sobbing, and she's like, I did a thing and I'm so scared and I really regret it and I don't know what to do. And, I remember in that moment being like, okay, right now, what I need to do is I need to make sure she knows that it's okay. Like, we're not going to shame anything here. So, I cleaned her up and bandaged her up and we talked about it, and we talked about getting help, and we got her a therapist, and then that led to finding other therapists. And then that led to going to doctors. Then that led to medications. And by it was November of 2016, we had our first suicide attempt. So now we're in a hospital, and in the state of Wisconsin, there aren't a lot of juvenile psych wards. So now you're in the system, right? You're in the mental health system. I didn't know anything about it. So it was a real, not a culture shock, but it was a shock at how shitty the system is. So you're a parent, you've got a daughter, you're scared, she's really sick. And you sit there for 6 hours while people get on telephones and try and find a bed because she can't stay there. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I mean, we've got 2 hospitals here in ours, we're kind of in this valley. There's lots of little towns. So sure enough, it won't be that far. And that's when they came back. It was like 2 a.m. and they gave me like a packet. It's all of her files. And they said, okay, you have to go to, it's a city on the south side of Milwaukee. It's a 2-hour drive. And I was like, what? Wait, what? Like, I'm not okay. And she's not okay. And now you're asking me to get to a car in the middle of the night in the snow and drive 2 hours? Like, for real? So off we went. And then you show up at this place in the middle of the night, and the intake is, again, just like the shitty system. And they treat you, it's not warm and welcoming. Fine. Okay. And then they're like, say goodbye. And then like the doors close, right?
And you have to leave your child.
You leave your 13-year-old there. And you're like, what? I don't, my mind, I cannot get my mind around what the fuck just happened.
Yeah.
And I'm in my car and I'm sobbing and I can barely drive. And I feel like it's coming up. I felt and feel helpless in that moment.
Yeah.
That like, how is it possible that she's a child, she's 13, that her life is so bad, and that I'm putting her in a place with no windows and they lock all the doors. Like, how is this going to be good for her? And then that's really the beginning. So the next.
That's the beginning.
That's the beginning.
I'm doing my best to hold it together here, but that's where it starts, when those doors close.
Yes.
Now this is the first step I've done to help my daughter, and this is where I'm at. So I got it.
Okay. And so now you're part of the system. And the system basically takes her, medicates her, and spits her out. And there's no safety net. There's nothing. It's like you have an appointment with your therapist when tomorrow.
So let me slow you down. So when was the next time you got to see her?
So I went every day. So
you were able to go see her the next day. How did you drive home that first night? How were you able to?
Well, it was like 6 a.m, right? Because now I've already driven down there, done the intake, and I turn around. I've like been up for over 24 hours. I don't know how I drove home. It was kind of like an out of body experience. I don't know. I was a zombie.
And then you went back the next day.
And the day after, and the day after. And I went every day.
How long was she there?
I don't know. I don't remember every single time. She'd been hospitalized 6 times, and usually it was between 5 to 9 days. Never really long enough to do much of anything other than to like take her off medication and put her back on different medication.
Right. So it wasn't like you left, like she was an alcoholic or a drug addict, and you left her at a really high end detox facility where she was going to learn some skills and be around other people. This was the only thing available that you could think of.
Well, it's what was offered. You show up in the ER and you're like, my daughter just swallowed an entire bottle of pills. So like, what do we do now? And they're like, well, she's going to have to drink some charcoal, and then we're going to get her into a psych ward. And you're like, oh, okay, that's what we do. Fine. Yeah. So she does the charcoal. We get her in a psych ward. Psych ward is like awful. And it's 2 hours away. And then each time, by the way, she never stayed in the same hospital more than once. Like, there was never beds available near us. So it was almost always.
Because as we were talking about before, this is not an isolated thing. You are so not alone,
right?
Because this is happening right under our noses, right in front of our screens and our entertainment, in everybody's lives. I can't throw a rock in any direction and not meet someone who is dealing with what you are dealing with. So what you're describing will resonate with too many people.
Yep. Yeah. And that's also why all of the juvenile psych wards are full. They're full. And it's why you wait till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to get to bed, because they're holding beds for kids that might show up. And then they finally release them at 1 or 2 in the morning, whatever their system is. And now you've got a bed. I mean, you're literally just looking for a bed, because that's all, in my opinion, that's really all those psych wards would do. is they would keep the kids safe. They had 24/7 supervision. They did some group work. They did some therapeutic work. 5 days, 7 days. Come on. That's not spitting into the wind is really what it felt like. And like the third and the fourth time I would sit with the psychiatrist that was running that, whatever that ward was. And I would say like, please do not send her home right now. This is our third go around. This is not working. We have to figure out something different. And they would say, oh, well, have you talked to her school? She has a therapist. And I was like, yes. And she has 2 parents and we're married. And we're nice people. And, we live in a nice little town and, she has teachers that care. She's trying to kill herself.
So she's actually one of the lucky ones who has a support system, and it's still this hard. So I'm curious because part of the book is her journals, and you wrote the book together. What was her, did she share her perspective of what was going on at the same time you were leaving her behind the closed doors and you were driving home?
So that was her journaling. So her therapy for herself or her coping was to write poetry. And her poetry was very, very troubling, right? When you read it, and that's one of the reasons that she didn't want to put it in the book and then put it out into the world. Right. And I said, okay, and what if we put it out in the world and there's another 13-year-old girl that reads it and goes, okay, I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. I have these same kinds of thoughts and I'm okay. So yeah, she talked about how it was really traumatizing for sure. Each experience was very traumatizing for her. And yet, she couldn't, the depression just continued to like push her towards the same thing every time. And so that's when I did a TEDx on like, at what point can I face reality of what is actually going on? Because I wanted to believe it was school. I wanted to believe it was social media.
It was something you could fix. You
right.
wanted to believe it was something you could fix.
Right. If I can make it something, if I can point my finger at it, then I can do something about it. And the reality that I needed to digest was that she was in really big trouble. The mental health system does not work for her. Might work for other people. It did not work for her. I think it was making her worse. And it might be that she would have to go to a program where she would not live at home. And that to me was so impossible. If someone had, and people did say that to me right away when she first was hospitalized, like, you might want to think about residential. And I was like, these places there's no windows. They don't go outside. Like, this makes no sense to me. This can't be better. 5 times, 6 times. Okay, uncle, maybe there is a better way. So it wasn't until I was able to like face that we found the help that actually did work for her.
And what helped? So what helped?
So I was I found an educational consultant. Nobody knows what they are. They are people that they travel the country and they go to these residential and wilderness therapy programs that are not covered by insurance, by the way. And they're all therapists, licensed therapists themselves. And they basically audit them and they match their clients with the right program.
Wow. So it's like our friend Teo Alfaro works with inner city troubled kids and brings them to his wolf sanctuary, Wolf Connection out in California. And they're, so it's not a hospital, it's a place where they can kind of meet themselves, and through the wolves, it's all different kinds of programs. Yes. Some outward bound, some that, art. Wow.
Exactly. So I found out about educational consultants by being on an online platform. It was the Depression and Bipolar Alliance, I think is what it was. And they had
Can you help me find that link so I can put it in the show notes for people?
I sure will. Yeah. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget.
Yeah. Cause I want to make sure that everything that we're talking about that we can just make it easy for people to find.
Beautiful. Yep. Yeah. There were lots of different parent forums. And so it was in those forums that I discovered these magic people called educational consultants. And so and there's actually an organization, which I will also give you the website for that. It's just like the ICF for coaches, except it's for educational consultants. So I went there, I interviewed two of them. I really liked the one lady. And so she, I was like, here's my thing. And she's like, okay, I can get you to the program. I need to know, does it have to be under insurance? And I said, at this point, I've been burning sage in her room, like, I don't care what it is at this point, but somebody, for God's sake, somebody help us. And so she's like, okay, if it does not have to be through insurance, we can get her great help. And I was like, yeah, that same, like, really? Like, where have you been? And why aren't you guys everywhere? So she interviewed Piper. She interviewed some of her school teachers. She interviewed her therapist, and she put together a program for Piper and said, not just the program, but got her all the way down to the therapist that would be absolutely perfect for Piper. And she's like, so it's in North Carolina. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that even mean? So now we have to figure out a way to get Piper to agree to go to North Carolina and live in the woods for 3 months with nothing. So that was not fun. And then I flew her out there and dropped her off.
So she finally said yes, and you did that.
Well, yeah. I mean, she did. I didn't have to kicking and screaming or anything, but I basically said, this is the deal. You are going to have to do some kind of residential program. You can either go to the really crummy one here in the state of Wisconsin, because we have terrible mental health services here, or you can go to a program where you can be outside, you can be around animals. They have horse therapy. They have a really awesome science program. It's up to you. And she was like, well, I think I want to do the North Carolina one.
Yeah.
And I said, but we're not going to see you. So once you get out of this car, we're not going to see you until the day you graduate.
And what was her experience?
It was very, very challenging. And that's the point, is they get you out there. They literally take everything, even the clothes. They just tell you, don't even bother packing, because we're going to take everything. When you get there, we're going to give you a t-shirt. We're going to give you pants. We're going to give you socks. We're going to give you shoes, underpants, and a bra. And we're going to give you a pack and a sleeping bag. And you're going to be here for 3 months. And you're going to live outside. So she learned a lot about herself, moved the needle massively. She ran away several times and was able to then figure out how to not, you buck the system, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, good for her, because that, there's her gumption and her will to take some control.
She's stubborn, right? And so she eventually made the turn to, okay, I want to figure out how to do this. She had the most amazing therapist I have ever witnessed. This woman was unbelievable and understood Piper at a molecular level. She was the best. So at that point, then, as she's coming up, and we had therapy once a week with her therapist as well. So her therapist would have calls with us, here's how Piper's doing, what's going on for you guys. We could write letters, but that was it. We had no contact with her at all. So when she graduated 3 months later, we got to go out and spend the night with her. So you go out and they have this big ceremony where you're standing there, and then your kids come down the hill. And when they see you, it was, after not seeing her, it was really powerful, because she showed up in such a different way.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, all of the agony and pain and everything that we threw at this, it worked. And we also knew that she wasn't done. And so then you go back to your educational therapist. Your therapist or consultant is working with the therapist who's working with you to decide, what do you do next? So the next step for her was then to go to a therapeutic boarding school, so she could get back on track academically, and she could live in a supervised environment, very structured, with all of the therapeutic work that she needed. And we could start addressing the medicine, because to this point, she still had not had a diagnosis. Every hospital gave her a different diagnosis. So we had like 5, none of them really fit. So we could figure out what was actually going on with her. We could get her meds settled out, blah, blah, blah. So we took her from North Carolina, and our educational consultant dialed all the way in and found us the right therapist in a program in Utah. So you fly her all the way over there and drop her off. And at least there we can have video therapy sessions. And once she gets far enough into the program, we could go visit her. And then she gets far enough into the program, she could come home on visits. And then eventually she graduates. And so she graduated in August last summer.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it was around that time when she's like, okay, I think I'm ready to put the book out there. I'm in a space where I think I can do that.
That's amazing. A couple more questions before we go to the book.
Yeah.
This one's going to be a rough question. Any of this your fault?
Yeah. So it's, as a mom,
forgive me, I did this on purpose because I know you can talk.
I'm
this
okay.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to take care of me.
I know that. I just want. This was more for the audience to know that I know that you this will bring some stuff up for them.
Yeah. So I told you before the show that our son, as soon as she got home, he spiraled, and he's now gone at a program for addiction. So I'm really sitting in this deep-seated fear that I'm a shitty mom. And it comes up a lot.
Right.
So intellectually, I know that it's not helpful. And even if it is my fault, like, what am I going to do about it now? Right? It's happened. But my heart still just gets devastated, because when you watch your children hurt, and, like my daughter's arms are they're destroyed. And there's no hiding that, you see it every day. And then now my son is, out in the desert at a place just like this other, it's a therapeutic boarding school, and he hates it there, and it's freaking hot. We're from Wisconsin.
Right.
There's 105 there. So it's something I'm working on. I'm really working through it, because I can't let it go just yet. I don't know. I'm holding on to it for some reason.
Right. So, for me, the answer is probably, I bet you there were parenting things I could have done better. Right.
Always.
And, no, it's not your fault. For me, whenever like God gave those kids the parents they needed, who would turn over every rock for them, right? Like those kids have their own higher power, their own path, and they chose you as parents. This is my own therapy, but basically, because everybody that I meet who is going through what you went through and are going through, I watch them do Herculean things, just such courageous, selfless things for your children, that I'm just so convinced that God, whoever, the universe, put you together because you're the people to help these souls, right? Because I don't believe my children belong to me, and even in our own parenting, when my younger son was kind of a goofball in high school and pothead, and I'm an addict. I was homeless, right? My brother, my family, I was waiting for the shoe to fall, right? And my ex and I, he was a pathological liar. And my ex and I were always talking about, what did we do? And I was like, yes. No, we are the parents that this kid needs. I was just so clear, even with the mistakes I made, that I was a parent that this kid needed. And why? Because I'm so dedicated to either doing my work and finding out what I need to shift, yes. Right? And I'll do anything for them, right? So that's why I asked the loaded question, because I know every single person who's listening to this, who is dealing with whatever level of this that they're dealing with, whether their kids is just smoking too much pot and not doing their homework, or they're in and out of institutions, they're blaming themselves.
Yeah.
And they gotta find ground. They gotta find ground in order to be able to be there.
And if you come from a place of blame, good luck.
You're lost. It's like jumping in the ocean with them.
Exactly. And I had an epiphany. So we got to go see my son. Because of COVID, we were not able to see him. So the last time I saw him was February. So we didn't get to see him March, April, May. And he really needed a visit. And
Mm,
so his therapeutic team like moved heaven and earth to make that visit happen.
good.
It was not casual, right? Like we had to do a lot of testing and we had to follow a lot of protocols in order just to go down there and see
Sure.
him. He's on a ranch with 45 other kids. They don't want COVID there. So anyways,
No.
I had a session with my peer coach that morning, and I really had to like get my, as I say, my poop in a group so that I could show up from love for him. Because up to the point that I talked to her, I was like planning my what ifs, all the scenarios. What will I do? How am I going to hold my boundaries? What if he, bing, bing, just all this like future tripping. And when I show up like that, he does not, I know he doesn't like that. I can't even imagine what it's like to be on the other end of that. And I'm exhausted. And then we don't connect because I'm like hyper vigilant. That's my coping. I'm a daughter of an alcoholic. I married an alcoholic. Now my son's an alcoholic. So like, it's what I do. And it was really freeing to kind of let all of that go and just show up and be a stand for him and to just be with him, whatever he is, however he showed up. And it was really beautiful.
So someone's sitting here listening in the car and they're tracking with your story.
Mm-hmm.
They're going through something similar, different names, different location. Yes. What do you want? What do you have for them? What do you want to talk? What do you want to tell them?
I think the critical thing is to get your arms around reality. Like, even if it feels like it's impossible, whatever that big, hairy, scary thing is, face it, look at it, study it, like quit turning your back on it. I was finding all sorts of reasons for why I didn't have to do the thing that my kid needed me to do. And it wasn't until I was ready to face.
And what was that thing?
To send her to a program where she didn't live at home.
Got it.
And then again, to do it again for my son. Like, yeah, awful decisions. Impossible. All decisions were impossible. Right. If that's how you feel, if everything seems impossible, how could that be? Yeah, that means, yep, you're in the right space, and you got to find the best of the really, really shitty options.
So I really appreciate you not bringing even a thin slice of varnish to this conversation.
Oh no.
I really appreciate it, because like you said, we got to deal with reality. One of the things I get nervous about with this podcast and what I talk about is, do I talk about pain too much? Do I talk about what people deal with too much? Like, am I just crazy and perpetuating it? And I don't think so. Right. So I appreciate that you didn't let anybody off the hook in this conversation. So it's going to serve. So when is the book going to come out?
September of this year. You can pre-order it. And I believe the electronic version is already out there. So if you want soft copies, it's ready to rock. You can get it, I believe, both Barnes.
Thank God, because I don't want people to wait. So let's put the links in the show notes so people can just go, and if they need it now, they can go get it.
Good.
Or they can, September is going to come here like that. So it's also, but cool. So let's take a deep breath. And you're up to a bunch of cool things also. You're a leadership coach, and you've written another book about leadership. And if you go to Allison's website, some of her videos, she has a page called News, where she just does 2, 3, 4 minutes of such wisdom and such practical stuff. You'll get an aha if you treated that as a bit of wisdom every day. I would go to her news page on our website. So what's coming up for you that you're creating in your world?
Um, well, business is going really well. I love the work that I'm doing now. I finally, I figured out my people and the work that I do. So that's all going really well. I'm super excited. I created a group program. It's been my dream, and it's something that I've been fumbling around with, and I couldn't quite ever figure out how to do it. And I think I finally got it. And it's called Pollinators. The idea is that when a bunch of amazing people get together and cross pollinate, wonderful things happen. And I'm doing a mixture of group work and then experiential stuff. So we're going to go work with horses. We're going to go rock climbing. We're going to learn Wim Hof breathing. We're going to just do, I don't know what crazy, uncomfortable, weird things, but like we're going to do it, and we're going to do it together. And then we're going to learn about ourselves. So it's a year-long program, and it starts up, in 3 weeks.
So like I said in my introduction, when I met Allison, the surface did not tell me that she was such a badass. So can people find that group program on your website?
No, no, that's invitation only. It's for people who have worked with me.
Okay. So, but go to her website, send her a note, and maybe you can talk her into letting you in. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for talking to us,
Yeah, thank you.
and just lots of love to your children and to your husband, who is probably a Hercules in his own right.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and to everybody else, thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for having this conversation with us. I love my audience. You go through thick and thin, no matter what we talk about. Please share the podcast. If you know people who need to hear what Allison has to say, or the book, please share this podcast. Let people know about it. And as always, let me know what you want to hear about, who you want me to interview, what you want me to talk about. Let's thrive when the world is asking the most of us. I love you guys. Have a great rest of the day.